Today, we're going to break down what is probably the most important scientific assessment on the state of our planet, the IPCC's 2023 Synthesis Report. This isn't just another study. This is the culmination of years of work by hundreds of the world's best scientists. It's their final unified verdict. So let's dive in and see what they found. So, after sifting through literally thousands of studies, the verdict is in. And the language here is so important. They don't say likely, they don't say probably. The word they chose is unequivocally. In the world of science, that's as close to a statement of absolute fact as you can possibly get. The debate about the cause? It's over. And this number, this is the direct result. Our planet's surface temperature is already 1.1 degrees Celsius hotter than it was before the Industrial Revolution. This isn't a future forecast. This is the warming that's already locked in, the change that's already happened. And really, this number is the foundation for everything else we're about to talk about.
Right, so let's be crystal clear about this. The consequences of that 1.1 degrees of warming aren't some far-off prediction for our grandkids. Nope. They are here right now, and they are measurable today.
I mean, just look at this. You don't need a PhD to see the trend here. The shift from those cool blues to the burning reds is just stark. The IPCC says our world has warmed faster since 1970 than in any other 50-year period for at least the last 2,000 years. That's not just a trend. That's an acceleration happening right before our eyes.
And that same acceleration, it's happening in our oceans too. It's not just that sea levels are rising, it's the speed of the rise that is so alarming. Look at the numbers. The rate nearly tripled in just a few decades. That's a direct result of warmer oceans and melting ice, and it has huge consequences for anyone living near a coastline.
And it's so important to understand that these things aren't just isolated incidents. From the crazy heat waves to the devastating floods and wildfires, the report shows a clear pattern. Human-caused climate change is now affecting weather and climate extremes in every single region across the entire globe. This is a systemic, planetary shift.
Okay, so we've seen the data. But what does this all mean for us, for people? Well, the report is emphatic on this point. The burden of these changes is not being shared equally, not even close.
This number is it's staggering. Up to 3.6 billion people. That's nearly half of all of us on Earth live in places that the IPCC officially defines as highly vulnerable to climate change. And so often, these are the communities that have done the absolute least to cause the problem in the first place.
And here is the brutal reality of what that vulnerability actually means. Between 2010 and 2020, if you lived in one of those highly vulnerable regions, you were 15 times, not 1.5, but 15 times more likely to die from a flood, a drought, or a storm than someone in a safer part of the world. 15 times. The injustice of this crisis is just written all over these numbers.
And the impacts don't just stop there. They ripple outwards, creating these cascading crises. It's never just the storm, right? It's the contaminated water and disease that comes after. It's not just the drought. It's the crop failure, the food shortages, and the displacement of people from their homes that follows. It's all connected.
So yeah, the story of what's already happened is written in stone. We can't change that. But the report is incredibly clear that the future is not. The decisions we make right now in this decade will determine which path we go down.
And this really is the fundamental question the report forces every single one of us to confront. It lays out these radically different potential futures, based entirely on the actions we take or fail to take.
Now, the crucial takeaway here is that every single fraction of a degree matters. A world at 1.5 degrees of warming is definitely going to be challenging, but it's on a completely different planet from a world at 4 degrees. Just look at the difference here. One future is difficult, the other is catastrophic and frankly unrecognizable. So, to help us wrap our heads around the scale of the challenge, scientists use this really handy concept. It's called the carbon budget. It's basically a way of putting a hard number on how much more CO2 we can afford to emit. Okay, so think of it like a real budget. You have a spending limit you can't go over. To stay below a certain temperature, like 1.5 degrees, there is a finite total amount of carbon dioxide humanity can ever release into the atmosphere. That total amount, that's our budget. And once we've spent it, it's gone.
This chart, wow, this really puts our situation into perspective. So to have just a 50-50 shot, a coin toss, of staying below 1.5 degrees, we had a finite budget. But by the start of 2020, we had already burned through 80% of it. That tiny little sliver of green, That's all we had left.
And this is maybe the most sobering finding in the entire report. It says that just the planned emissions from the power plants, cars, and factories that are already built and operating today would be enough to blow through our entire remaining budget for 1.5 degrees. Let that sink in. Without retiring things early, we are already locked in to overshoot that goal.
But the report doesn't end there. It doesn't just leave us with the problem. It pivots hard to the solutions, and it makes it very clear that the pathway to a safer future is still open, but only if we act now. And here's some incredibly good news buried in all that data. The technologies we need for this transition, they haven't just gotten better, they've gotten radically cheaper. The cost of solar power and the batteries we need to store it plummeted by 85% in just 1 decade. This is a complete game changer. It turns the transition from a sacrifice into a massive economic opportunity.
I find this fascinating. Of all the images in the world, the scientists and authors of the IPCC report chose this specific photo for their cover, and its title is Fog Opening the Dawn. It's such a powerful metaphor for right now, isn't it? We're at this moment of choice, stay in the fog of inaction or push through to a new day.
And so, this is where we end. The report has done its job. It's laid out the facts with piercing clarity. The science is settled, the risks are known, and the future is still in our hands. The question it leaves us with is not for someone else to answer. It is for each of us. What role will you play in the story we write next?